Right. For this next segment of our episode here, we're going to borrow an idea from an ESPN article. I forgot who wrote it, but they basically listed all 30 NBA teams and their most damaging roster move that they've made since 2020, and they went ahead and ranked them. We'll focus on the Hornets here, obviously, and highlight 1 to 2 per person, and we'll probably have to touch on the same ones. I'm sure a lot of the same roster moves will pop up in each of our ideas. This can include trades. This can include signings. This could include drafted players. I even saw coaching decisions within this article. So if you want to talk about that, anything related to personnel or players, Brian, when you look back since the off season of 2020 moving forward, I'll let you start with this one. What do you think is one of the more damaging moves that the Hornets have made since then?
Yeah, it was Zach Cram wrote the article for ESPN, formerly of the Ringer, and a guy that's usually pretty good writer, pretty stats heavy with a lot of his analysis on baseball and basketball. He picked Gordon Hayward. I gotta say that would not have been my choice. I understand some of the sort of like maybe rashness with the decision. They signed Gordon Hayward. They had to stretch Nick Batum, and that was something that I think caught some people, including the Celtics, by surprise. If I remember, the Celtics sort of then had to, they just didn't expect Charlotte was going to have the money to actually just make this type of offer with Gordon Hayward. And I think that sort of like short circuited some of their offseason plans. Gordon Hayward was also like, well, maybe a flawed player, was really good to pair next to LaMelo. Like he really helped from a matchup standpoint, a guy that size, that with that strength, who could pass, dribble, shoot, play for multiple levels. His biggest flaw was health. Like if he had just been healthy, this guy would have been like, maybe even an all-star at some point in the Eastern Conference for a deal that was certainly pricey, but like not the end of the world. I think Charlotte, long story short, I think Charlotte made like way worse moves throughout the Gordon Hayward stretch. And then they ended up with a new front office turning Gordon Hayward into Trey Mann and a second round pick. So it's like they were still able to get off of him and still got like positive trade value. I know Oklahoma City was motivated by their own financial decisions there, but for me, the one that I will always come back to will be draft night 2022. That to me, that offseason in general is just like really where things went sideways in many directions for the Hornets. You have the firing of James Borrego, the Kenny Atkinson, decision to accept and then turn down the job. You had them going into draft night without a coach, which is not the end of the world, but something to consider. Everything with Miles Bridges went really in a pretty drastically worse direction after that as well. But the night of the draft, if I'm remembering correctly, exactly like what the Hornets did, they came into the draft with the 13th pick and then the 15th pick, which they had gotten in return from New Orleans via the Devontae Graham sign and trade. The Hornets take Jalen Duren out of Memphis with a 13th overall pick. And Richie, as you may remember from our draft night pod that year, we were pretty ecstatic for a few minutes. We were pretty thrilled knowing that the Hornets had seemingly gotten this awesome run jump center who could face up and pass. And they had another, fringe, just outside the lottery pick coming up a few slots later. And then just slowly as things started to transcend from there, realizing that the pick was being traded to Detroit, mostly so Charlotte could get off the salary line for the 13th pick so that they could be able to extend or re-sign Miles Bridges and stay under the tax before the season started. Not even by the end of the season, which they could have absolutely have done. So they could mostly get just like draft fodder in return. I think the best pick they got out of that was the one that became, Nick Smith Jr. a year later. That hasn't really panned out super great either. So for me, it was a cheap move. It was one that a franchise that had a chance to add 2 top 15 players in the draft, ended up getting only one, and that guy's not even on the roster anymore, and Mark Williams. So for me, it will be draft night 2022 in the decision by the front office to move off the 13th pick. That one for me will sting for a while, I think.
That's a good one. That was on my short list. Like, ultimately, I don't necessarily care about like, as of now, I don't care about the Mark Williams, Jalen Duren debate. I think the jury is kind of still out on those players. But as you mentioned, the idea that they were trying to save money, and they even, obviously kept the guy that was lower in the draft order to save like $1 million. So they weren't going to use both picks, or we didn't know that at the time, but they weren't going to use both picks, but they even kept the guy that was, a couple slots down. That irked me more than anything. This would not be my top one, but I understand why. Regulator in the chat says trading Jalen Duren for NSJ is worse than the Gordon Hayward thing. And to your point, like, going back to the Gordon Hayward, when I compare Gordon Hayward to this specific instance since 2020, I think the biggest thing for me, obviously the contract was, gave a lot of people pause just because of how expensive it was. But at the time, like, I feel like I was one of the higher people in the Hornets community that on this specific, sign and trade. I think the most detrimental part was the waiving and the stretching of Batum's $27 million over the course of a few years. So I think in the article it said, like, he's ultimately going off the end result and not necessarily the process. But I do think there's a process, or there's a path where the Gordon Hayward signing could have worked out. But I do think, to your point, Brian, that night was probably more detrimental than the Gordon Hayward sign and trade. So, but both of those were on my short list.
Richie, did you have another one that was at the top of your list, or are those the two that are vying for the top spot?
No, so my top one was the Kai Jones.
Yeah, that was two for me. Which is amazing that it ended up not working. That pick ended up still just coming back to the Hornets and turned into Con Knipple. So I guess it all worked out in the end, Yeah,
I mean, like, as they traded for Kai Jones. Like, Book Knight obviously was a poor draft pick as well, but like, at least they didn't have to trade for him. The fact that they went out and traded for Kai Jones and he just never materialized on the court wasn't very meaningful in terms of his impact, and obviously had some mental, issues in terms of why he got released was because of those comments he made. And he just was stuck between two positions. Like, he didn't really materialize out there. I think he tried. He was over eager in a lot of things that he did, but he also took himself out of plays. And I think it was just the outgoing draft pick that, never conveyed to a first round pick, but it kind of loomed over us for several seasons. Like, okay, if, was it they make the playoffs, it was conveyed or whatever. So it's almost like, okay, Charlotte, don't make the playoffs, don't make the playoffs, don't make the playoffs. Okay, now we're good. Now you guys can start. But I think that was a little bit more detrimental than the Duren and Williams. But they're neck and neck for me.
If you're allowed to add the James Bouknight selection to the Kai Jones trade, and you get a little 2-for-1 for like just calling it that draft in general, the 2021 draft, that has a fighter's chance to take top spot if we're allowed to bend the rules here.
Those two drafts were the 2021 and 2022 drafts. Those are some interesting team building nights for the Charlotte Hornets, because 2021 you have the Mason Plumlee trade, which wiped away the cap space that Charlotte could have had, right, to go after Rashawn Holmes.
Yeah, it saved them. It saved them from signing Rashawn Holmes, one of the worst contracts in the NBA. Who knew, right? Yeah,
then you take Bouknight. I mean, there's no way, but you end up taking Bouknight over Moody and Sengun and Trey Murphy. I mean, it's a tough spot to draft from.
Phones were ringing off the hook, according to Mitch Kupchak. He was He was impressed by the level of trade offers that the Hornets. He went and bragged to the media afterwards after selecting Bouknight. The trade offers they turned down. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah, he was so impressed. That he ended up not making any moves, which was just a reoccurring theme of sorts for draft nights past of the Hornets. But yeah, really, to me that's like when things just went off course with this team. It wasn't it wasn't like the Hayward signing, which maybe that sped up the process for them, but really it was the fact that like these two important team building cycles just did not net anything really of much, in terms of like on-court production or in return for Charlotte.
Aaron, what about you? Do you have an acquisition or a transaction that was the worst in your eyes?
So one thing before I do that, I want to touch on with Kai Jones was that it also didn't feel like they had a plan. So, like, if you're going to do that, you should have a plan. And if I remember correctly, one of the biggest things about Kai Jones leaving Texas and going, into the NBA was they didn't have a plan for him either. So if you're going to draft this guy who like was one of these 3 centers that they had, and he would play small forward and sometimes, you would have a plan. And they were just like, we'll just throw him out there and see what happens. So that didn't make any sense. But my biggest one is actually the lack of a move, and that was not doing anything when Miles Bridges was out. That to me was like, I know a lot of things led to that, but I don't understand what they thought was going to happen after that offseason. And considering they kept Terry Rozier too long. They kept Kelly Oubre, which is like you knew you weren't going to keep him, and he was averaging 20 that year. So it's like you could have gotten something from that. Gordon Hayward probably would have been a little better. Same with PJ. The PJ turnover wasn't bad. It's just now they got Cooper, so it just kind of nullifies that. But yeah, to me, that was just the biggest one, was just not doing anything after Miles Bridges. He was on track to become your second best player. And once again, I think a lot of that just piles on from the lack of the draft, filing Borrego, not having a coach, Kenny Atkinson, but just not, I don't know. I just don't understand what they thought was going to happen. That was your perfect chance to say, okay, it may not be our fault, but this happened. Let's reevaluate and try to change things. But they kept, the salary cap high. They kept like playing guys who you knew it just didn't make any sense if we're not trying to win. Our younger guys, even though they may not have played as well as we would want them to, they had short leashes. It just didn't make any sense in that season. So the lack of just not doing anything when that was your easy out to try to fix things was, because what we're doing now, we should have did then. And that's to me was why it's the biggest. It's just, it probably is because now I can see like this was easy to do. It's not like Jeff Peterson got a king's ransom for any of those guys, but it was better than we're going. And also it doesn't make sense that to my knowledge, Mitch Kupchak and them knew this whole time when it was kind of being up in the air, like Ismail's going to come back during the season. They knew they worked out a deal with Adam Silver to say he's not going to play this year, to play next year. So it just, the whole debacle just didn't make any sense. And if you knew that, that was your chance to kind of reset things, especially considering you had a chance to eventually do something with finishing with a positive record, though 10th in the East. So yeah, that to me was just the biggest thing. I think it was just a wasted opportunity. I don't even think they could have turned that roster and all of a sudden made it better. But now you got 2 years of kind of where we're at because of that, because they just sat there and didn't do anything. So that to me is my biggest
Did
one.
Bridges play on the qualifying offer before getting this newest contract? Is that what happened when he came back, or am I misremembering that?
I believe he did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Must have. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to bring up too many new ones. I think we've got the leaders in the clubhouse have been mentioned. I'm going to spend some time pushing back against a couple of things. I'm going to rewrite history a little bit here, but a few honorable mentions. So far, signing LaMelo Ball to max contract hasn't worked out great. I'm just saying, return on investment so far up to now hasn't been what you would want for a max player, but that's a future thing, so we're not going to worry too much about that. Letting Malik Monk walk as an unrestricted free agent doesn't look good now. Look, at the time, he went and signed for like a veteran minimum in LA. The whole league felt that way. He wasn't the best pro. He's admitted it. I think you can put a fair enough like asterisk next to that to say it wasn't just the Hornets making a mistake there. Releasing Caleb Martin, again, another one. Looked terrible in that finals run. But like he even said, I would have waived me as well. He said that live on an interview. I watched him saying it, right? Because he was not good in Charlotte. So those are two that look silly on paper, but if you actually like watch the games and paid attention, like most teams, 99% of teams would have probably made those decisions. A sneaky underrated one, and it's a similar in vein to Darian's mentioned there, something they didn't do. Do you remember the 12 hours when the Hornets were interested in signing Larry Markkinen? Before they signed Kelly Oubre. Shams Charania said the Hornets have interest in Larry Markkinen when they had the cap space, and he ended up signing Oubre instead. And imagine if they'd signed Larry Markkinen at that point and he'd flourished in Charlotte like he did in Utah. That would have been a game changer, folks. So that's a underrated one that I often see getting forgotten.
Yeah.
Right. Gordon Hayward I was absolutely diabolical signing from the minute it happened, and I will not have anyone say otherwise. The wave and stretch of Batum, like you said, Brian, like, oh, the problem is he got hurt. Well, no shit. Like, Gordon Hayward always got hurt. We knew this. It's not like he was a perfect thing of health. He was always getting hurt, and that was always the problem. He was going to be old. Like, I just found. I mean, I was down on that signing the minute they did it because it accelerated the timeline as well when the team clearly wasn't ready, as we came to see. And like you look at that 2021 draft, like you end up drafting 11th because of how well they did the next year. They missed out on the Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Scotty Barnes crop. That if they'd not signed Gordon Hayward, they would have been right in that mix. And 2022 as well, when they're back at the end of the lottery, the 13th and 15th pick. I just think that ruined the cap sheet. It ruined the draft pick value, and he didn't play enough. And I feel like all the worries I had when that signing happened, I was just like it just all realized. It went as badly as I thought it was going to do from day one. So I'm offering some yin to your yang, Brian.
Yeah, just real quickly, like I would not like I said it multiple times on the pod back when it happened. Like, there's no way in hell I would have done the Hayward signing.
Okay.
At all. I would not have done it. But I understood the rationale behind it. Like that to me, it made some sense. And honestly, like Hayward's injury health really took a turn for the worse when he got to Charlotte. Like, other than the one catastrophic injury he had at the game one of the 17-18 season, he actually had played a lot over his time in Utah. And in those final two seasons in Boston, like he only played 52 games in the 1920 season, but that was cut short because of the COVID pandemic. And then really it was his time in Charlotte is when he hit 30 and the wheels fell off. So again, there was plenty of like downside risk when he signed that contract. It was irrational that they did it in part because of the Batum concern. But I think
44 million, I think it was the total salary hit for Gordon Hayward. 44 million with the Batum's waiving, stretching, and the Hayward salary, which was just hamstring this team for so long. So I think that's a worthy winner. Like, I actually think the ESPN article might have got it right. My other one was with you, Richie, was that 13th pick one to save cash. You know, Mitch Kupchak saying we don't want too many young guys on the roster. I mean, fine, trade one of the other young guys who wasn't a lottery pick. Like, you know, it was just the worst type of asset management they ever had. So
they could have gone into the season over the cap.
Yeah,
that was the other thing. They could have gone into the season over the cap.
Like, I never thought that was a legitimate excuse. Like,
or over the tax, I should say. Not I should say over. Then they could have gotten under at the deadline or whatever. Like, they absolutely could have done that.
Right. And what were you saving money for?
Like,
Michael Jordan. You know what I mean, it was mandated by the owner. Like, come on.
Yeah. So I think those two. I don't know if we want to vote here, but I think I'd probably vote for Hayward, but I wouldn't be opposed to that 2022 draft lottery either. That trade. That was such a bad process.
Monk was also on my short list. Just like letting him walk for nothing was just, again, not good asset management. I also think not sort of recognizing, like James noted, like he went to LA and played on a very cheap contract and used that to boost his value and get a big deal for Sacramento, which is great. And he's blossomed, the start of like the Mike Brown era out there. But like, I don't know, like I did think his talent like did sort of like shine through in a lot of ways too. And for a team that was so starved for creation, I kind of couldn't believe how much like on-ball stuff they walked away from that summer. Like, they moved Graham. That wasn't like a bad transaction because it got them the 15th pick, which turned into Mark Williams. But everything got put onto a lot more stuff got put onto LaMelo's plate when you move on from Graham and you move on from Monk, who you got nothing in return for heading into the next season. So my vote would be for 2022 draft if we're going to do the vote, but there's plenty to choose from here. Is something that's clear.
Right. Do you guys want to end? I don't think the article did this, but do you guys want to end on the best move since 2020? James, you want to end with that?
Yeah. I mean, we've mentioned it a couple of times. I think the Devontae Graham signing trade has to be mentioned. This is a rare moment of gold for Mitch Kupchak to trade Devontae Graham, who was out of the league by the end of his contract, for a 15th pick, which is the highest pick it could be when it was traded. Otherwise, it would have been 2 seconds. And that was all from the play-in. First year of the play-in, New Orleans, Brandon Ingram's hitting these mid-range jumpers against, was it the LA Clippers? Was it against? I'm trying to remember now. But like, he was hitting all these mid-range jumpers. They came back from 18 points down in the fourth quarter to give Hornets that first-round pick. And that was just like from trading a guy who was out the league for the 15th pick is a pretty incredible move. So that I think would be my top one. Yeah, that's my top single move.
I have a pretty clear number one for me, and that's Michael Jordan selling the team.
Yes,
that was going to be mine.
That has to be, for me, that's number one. If we're including like the sales of franchises in this discussion, to me, it's not even.
It's a great call.
It's not even close. Yes, the Graham was great, like deal work, craftsmanship, by the front office. But no, it's this. The team is on a totally different trajectory with the new ownership group as opposed to Michael Jordan. So that's made all the difference, even if it hasn't turned into like sustainable, winning quite yet.
I think just the new philosophy under the owners, Jeff Peterson, Charles Lee. Like, obviously, we're so early into the tenure, but I do think that has been a great transition. And you're just seeing the way that they approach trades, the way that they approach team building very differently than Mitch Kupchak, which is so funny. We talk about Mitch Kupchak being an MJ, being someone that's very, trying to go after those big names or those big targets and spending a lot, but then they actually saved money in that 2022 draft. I guess another trade that we should probably highlight is trading Rozier to the Heat for the first round pick.
On my list.
Yeah, he obviously has taken a little bit of a downturn here since that trade, both on the court and also potentially off the court. I just think they cashed in at the right moment. Maybe they could have done it earlier.
He was trying to cash in too.
What'd you say?
I said he was trying to cash in too.
At least his stuff is not nearly as dark as the Malik Beasley stuff is like gives me the chills, man.
That's insane. That's
horrible situation. Horrible situation all around, man. It's a real problem, like in the country right now. But yeah, I kind of think they spun off Rozier at like the perfect time. I really think that it really was like the absolute best time to have parted ways with him. And they got, we'll see what happens with Miami, the next 2 seasons, but potentially a really nice, asset to have in the pipeline.
Another underrated one, and it's not technically one transaction, but if we just count the Phoenix Suns Charlotte Hornets trades as one thing, they traded Nick Richards, Cody Martin, and Vasa Micic, and a very late second-round pick for what eventually became 6 seconds, Colin Sexton, and a 2026 first-round pick, which is going to be a late 2026 first. But like, I know they took on like Josh Okogie's salary and Nurkic's salary, like technically, but that is some almighty making, incredible value out of something. Just like 2 players were out of the league and one who's like a backup center on an average team. It was just crazy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it really is like Ishbia comes to town in Phoenix, MJ leaves town in Charlotte. And then like all of a sudden, like the things like all of a sudden, like that's the team you should be wanting to do deals with is the Phoenix Suns.
And the funny part of it is, I feel like I remember that to get Robert Sarver, to get him to sell the team, they were going to bring in Michael Jordan to like talk to him. So it's just super ironic that this is how this turned out. I remember Bill Simmons talking about that the like a hammer was going to be Michael Jordan coming in saying you need to sell the team. So that's insane that's how that turned out.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, in now two franchises that are just heading in different, sort of different directions. I guess we'll see how things go with Phoenix retooling around Devin Booker. But just from like an optionality standpoint, the Hornets have a lot of different pathways they can go, whereas Phoenix is really tied to how much can you maximize the late, like the prime and late prime of Devin Booker with not like some good young players, but not a ton of good young players. And then, so it speaks to sort of like the just, I think overall, health or, like upside that the two franchises have right now. So, but we'll see.
I think another almost honorable mention is getting that first round pick from Dallas. Like if they didn't end up with Cooper, that pick would have been, there's no telling how good that pick could have been. And when you think about the now, like trading PJ, who really couldn't find his role on the team, to Grant, who does so much for this team on and off the court. And then you might, could possibly had like a top 5, 3 to 5 pick if they didn't land Cooper. So that would have been by far one of up there.
I think that's one of those trades where people in the national media still view that as like, oh, what a great trade for Dallas, like trading for PJ Washington. And I'm like, I think it's a great trade for Charlotte. Like Grant just fit what this team needed a lot more than PJ, and they got a first round pick. Like if you tell me right now, if I could go back in time and like Grant injury didn't happen, right? No one could see that happening. If you told me PJ Washington and Grant Williams for the Charlotte Hornets straight up on the contracts they're on, I would say Grant Williams. Like never mind the first round pick extra. And I kind of felt like that at the time. So it's one of those weird ones where I think only Charlotte Hornets people who followed this team and understood the lack of defensive focus, vocal leadership, etc. this team had, realized the value that Grant had that PJ just couldn't have, because it's all off the court stuff. You need to be paying attention.
And all the alleged reasons Dallas wanted to get rid of Grant was every single thing we needed. Like everything that they said that, oh, he's trying to run the practices, he thinks, this and that. It's like we need every single ounce of that. So it was a great trade.
He is a good basketball player. Like he's a really, I mean, I hope he comes back and is healthy because he can help Charlotte, but I think there's a chance that like he ends up having trade value at some point. I know that's a little tricky, just given contract timelines and the injury he's coming back from, but like a guy like that, I know he's undersized, but he's so strong. He can play multiple front court positions. He can execute multiple pick and roll coverages, even if it is like a little silly seeing this like 6'4.5" tall guy play drop coverage. But just like the pick and pop shooting, the high post passing, the mid-range touch, like he's a super useful player. So yeah, I've just got my fingers crossed to see him back out on the court as soon as possible. And yeah, that trade was, again, another one where I think they moved off of PJ at the perfect time to get that type of return.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, guys, before we wrap?
It's safe to say that we're headed in a better direction. I feel like that's all it is.
I will say it is always easier to tear a team down and sell it for parts, which is what this Hornets front office has done, than it is to have to start spending some of that draft capital and those assets and money to try and put together a competitive team. Like, tell me a team that's like rebuilt and people haven't been like, hey, that's easy. When you're taking on bad contracts, you can make deals that look good on paper. It's quite easy. The harder part is always the next bit. So I think they've done a good job like maximizing what they could do so far. When they put their foot down the accelerator pedal, that's when you're going to really need to see some craft and looking into like, how do these guys fit? What is the philosophy? Like that's a lot more difficult to do.
And I wonder about the timing of it all. Being a new front office, do they wait too long because they're too busy trying to find like that perfect moment, and then they just let things go to waste? Not on purpose, like Mitch Kupchak and Michael Jordan and them, but just we thought we would get a little more, or we thought we would get, have this type of pick. So yeah, it definitely gets tricky moving forward, because as we've all mentioned, they're starting to pay people now. So even though we are taking on these contracts, money's being spent. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it going forward.
And another thing, going through this exercise, it just dawns on you how inactive the Kupchak era was from a transaction point of view. Like, do you remember sitting through those trade deadlines, drafts, summers? Like, it was so unimaginative, all the moves. It was like simple 1-2 team trades. Now just look at the complex nature, like how they freed up cap space last summer, how they made some of the trades this offseason where they've moved things around. Like it's just like taking players, flipping them for more players.
Yep.
It is just they're so much more proactive, which is just like from people who cover the team like we do. It's refreshing to see rather than just like Mitch Kupchak sitting through year 3 of Vernon Carey Jr. being like, well, I think he can pop this year. Like it's just a different level of approach.
Yep. You nailed it. Like it's one of those things, James, you said it a second ago. Like it's objectively true that like it's easier to team build in this regard, like to sort of like do you're stripping off parts and selling pieces off and taking on bad salary and
but they didn't do it.
I guess the thing is it's that like you shouldn't just take it for granted because it's not a given that you look at Chicago, you know, or look at what Washington was up until the new regime there too. Like it's not every franchise is going to go for it. So it's fortunate to at least be in the position where they're willing to pursue these methods. And it leads to even, you know, it leads to these draft picks. It also leads to guys like Moussa Diabate that you find, you know, off the scrap heap, and then you turn into like a, you know, potentially like a rotation player, you know, going forward too. So just it gives you more options, and so it's good for them to be in that spot now.
Yeah, I think, you know, Mitch Kupchak and MJ, they were just trying to hold on to any kind of hope that got them into the playoffs, and they didn't want to trade away assets in case that they were in the play-in for some odd reason. But to you guys' point, like moving forward is going to be the hard part. But if they ever get in a bind, they'll just call up Phoenix, and we'll probably make a pretty deal. So kind of project this team forward.
Matt Ishbia, what do you want from Miles Bridges? He went to Michigan State. Call it in right now.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode in our Substack chat. Feel free to let us know what you think the worst or best move has been with this Charlotte Hornets franchise since 2020. If you also want to support us, head over to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. For Darian, for Brian, for James, I am Richie.